on a very special edition of Kooks, Cranks, and Iconoclast podcast. Mike reveals all, and J-Lo reveals the rest of all. Today on a very special episode. Hi, I'm Matt.
I'm Mike.
And I'm J-Lo.
And today, very special episode for you, the fan. Anyone that loves comic books today is about to get their minds blown out of the back of their skull.
You're going to slide out of your seats,
You're
ladies.
about to like them even more.
That's right. We're going to let you know from A to Z and from up to down everything you need to know about this clown. Let's do this.
Homie the Clown?
Homie the Clown.
Rusty the Clown.
Mike is going to be hosting today. Co-host is J-Lo. And technically directing today is Matt. And I'll be breaking in.
On the wheels of steel.
On the wheels of steel. And
Changing
I'll be
it up.
breaking in every couple of minutes here with some kick-ass factoids that you didn't know.
Flash facts.
Super sweet. Let's do this. Mike, go ahead and kick us off, man.
Alrighty. This is from the secretsun.blogspot.com, a site run by the incomparable Christopher Knowles, an astronautic and comic fan. Brilliant man, brilliant. Strongly recommend you check out his site. Like to hear? Here you go. Pop culture exists under a relentless Klieg light these days, and those mycological resonators often wilt under the glare. Creators such as Philip K. Dick and H.P. Lovecraft were able to flourish creatively because they had just enough of a readership to keep their work going, but were also granted the rare luxury of relative obscurity. And so it was with Jack Kirby and Steve Ditko. Marvel, back then called Atlas, was a spent force in the comic business in the mid-1950s and paid some of the lowest rates in town. As a great packager and salesman of ideas, Stanley Lieberman, a.k.a. Stan Lee, he didn't have much to sell or package, and his boss, Martin Goodman, wanted it that way. The artists don't necessarily end up at Stan's door out of choice. Ditko was a young artist whose work was too ugly and weird for the big publishers, and Kirby was a vet who had trouble getting work elsewhere, partly because he was seen as a has-been with an out-of-date style, and partly because of conflicts with his editors. Stan wisely gave Kirby and Ditko carte blanche and allowed their fertile imaginations to run riot. In return, they gave him an army of characters to take straight to the bank. It was that period from 1957 to 1961 that's the most revealing. Kirby and Ditko produced reams of throwaway stories for Stan's low-selling sci-fi and horror books that contained the germs of their later successes for Fantastic Four and Spider-Man and the rest. As Marvel took off, Kirby and Ditko both became famous for their proto-psychedelic freakouts, especially with the hippie crowd. But they weren't idle reveries on their part. They were based in a deeply personal response to stresses and anxieties in their lives and their relationships to the world around them. That in fact their responses were so different speaks to the profound difference between the two men, which in turn speak to the deeper schisms in the culture at large. And though conservative-minded comics fans poo-poo the influence of hallucinogens on their work, I'm not quite so sure myself. Kirby and Ditko's work was wildly imaginative before it took off for parts unknown, but something seems to set them apart from the creators around them, and both were not quite the straight-laced 50s men some fans would have you believe. Jack Kirby was a close friend with Frank Zappa and socialized with this young hippie and geeks and fans in the 60s. Ditko shared an office with his best friend and sometime collaborator Eric Stanton, whose bondage/femdom fetish artwork is as extreme and insane as anything else published at the time. As I wrote in Wizards, Workings, and Walk-Ins, the psychedelic landscape that the Dr. Strange, found himself in were a huge part of his appeal with the hippie generation, who automatically assumed that Ditko too was experienced, i.e. an LSD user. Comics historians have always scoffed at these claims, but I'm not so sure. Ditko did become Mr. Objectivist in the late 60s, but before he was no stranger to the demi-monde, having shared a studio with legendary fetish artist Eric Stanton, who himself was addicted to painkillers and deeply connected to all sorts of underworld and bohemian characters through his work for various pornographers. Exactly the kind of people who would have been toying with psychedelics in the late 50s and early 60s. That's from the Secret Sun, Christopher Knowles' website. It's secretsun.blogspot.com. Highly recommend you check it out. Kirby, cosmic craziness, synchro mysticism. Man, it's so prophetic, and it touches in on a lot of what we're going to talk about today. We're going to cover the history of the superhero, I guess, to a degree.
That as well as especially the writers who created them.
Yes. Time allotted, we're gonna lay down the whole history here in a bite-sized format. Yeah, we're gonna cover some of our favorite writers, probably mention a few artists as well. We're going to have a lot of comic book recommendations for you. This is homework, folks, but it's fun homework.
Oh, my God, it's so fun.
There will be some very hot takes in here as well. I think that this episode could spawn quite a few heated debates at parties.
Some hot sports opinions. We're going to touch on, who else? We're going to talk about the Vile, the Worm Tongue, the evil Dr. Frederick Wortham, who was responsible for the creation of the Comics Code Authority. We're going to talk about Steve Ditko and his flirtation with objectivism that turned him into an even bigger weirdo. Boy, we got a lot to cover.
We're going to take the gold, silver, and bronze age. And then I believe you guys have, man, there's so many names up here.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about mostly the Bronze Age because of its influence on today.
Current relevance.
Yes, it's definitely where I think most of today's cultural touchstones have kind of come from. Basically, if you want to trace the evolution of let's say, we'll start with the modern era, concept of the masked superhero, masked or costume character. You're going to want to go all the way back to the Victorian age with proto-superheroes. Characters like Sherlock Holmes, Captain Nemo, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. If you don't see a straight analog to the Incredible Hulk there, then you are blind, my friend. Yeah, I think this whole idea was best encapsulated by the megalomaniacal Alan Moore's comic book, The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. It's a fucking cool idea, though. It's so, I don't know, it just seems so natural to put all these characters together. It makes sense.
Yeah, they incorporated all the mythologies of, I guess, the Western world into...
Sort of, yeah.
One little super team there.
Like I said, yeah, these are like proto superheroes. And from there, we kind of jump in, fast forward a little bit into, say, let's say the 1920s, 30s. And that's when you hit the pulp era. And that's when we have characters such as Doc Savage, The Shadow, those two respectively being large influences on Superman and The Shadow, respectively. You've got the Spider, who is a lot like The Shadow, except much weirder and much more violent and strange. You've got G8 and his Battle Aces, which were a direct influence on the excellent film Sky Captain, The World of Tomorrow.
Were they supposed to be the Great Eight? Why are they the G?
His name is just G8 because he's basically a spy. He's an aviator above all else, but G8 is like his spy name. He's like a man with no name.
Does he got some kick-ass aviators on all the time, or?
He's got some goggles. You know what? I would say he's a direct visual influence on the Mike Mignola / Hellboy universe character of Lobster Johnson. Mike Mignola, holy shit. Excellent, awesome writer and artist. Check out the whole Hellboy universe. It's fucking fantastic.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, but you have these pulp characters who are sort of like the next step in the evolution of the costume superhero and masked mystery villains, etc. Then from that point, we jump right in the golden age. And I would say that the crowning achievement or, number one...
Mike, I have breaking news coming in from the news desk.
Yeah.
This just in.
Uh-huh.
When the Comic Code was first created, it was prohibited from telling police and judges that they were bad. Also, werewolves not allowed. Back to you.
And that's why artist Marv Wolfman changed his name to Marv Wolfman as a fuck you to the Comics Code Authority. Thanks, Marv.
Yeah, thanks, Marv.
Yeah, I would say the Golden Age's crowning moment would be the introduction of one Superman, Kal-El, Clark Kent, Joel Shuster, and J-Lo, do you remember the other guy? Blanking.
Oh my gosh, I know them so well, I can't remember their names.
Wasn't it Robinson? Schuster and Robinson?
Joe Shuster and... I can't think of the name.
It's all, we'll come back to it. Yeah, but Superman, I would say that his appearance is where the Golden Age is given birth. Not to say that there weren't plenty of characters around before that. I mean, a few years after him, you've got Batman, who didn't come along much farther. But you've got all these obscure characters like, oh man, I don't know, the Weeper. Who else?
Crazy Quilt?
Nah, he was more of a Silver Age.
Was he really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh man, there's too many.
There's so many.
Yeah, it's just.
And they're all ridiculous.
Yeah, man, do yourself a favor and go check out the Wikipedia Golden Age comic books page, and you'll fall down a rabbit hole immediately, I promise.
If you don't want to read the comics and you want to see some of the silliness that kind of came out of the Gold and Silver Age in a cartoon, watch Batman the Brave and the Bold.
Yes, that's the perfect animated encapsulation of the more, I would say, definitely Silver Age sort of characters being used. Man, yeah, that's when like characters like Crazy Quilt or Bawana Beast, or one of my personal favorites, Metamorpho, the Element Man. So from the Golden Age, which I would also say is very much defined by World War II. That's when you have like the Justice Society.
Captain America.
Yeah, Justice Society, Captain America. Of course, the Justice Society being the precursor to the Justice League. These characters were, I think there's a very iconic Captain America cover of him straight up punching the fuck out of Hitler in the face. It's great.
Which is ironic because it was so pro-America back then, and now it's not.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
Civil War very much exemplified that.
Yeah, Captain America definitely changes with the times. I will say that. He became nomad for a while, man without a country. There is a rumor, I can't substantiate this, but it just sounded fucking cool. Reminded me very much of Philip K. Dick's The Man in the High Tower. Also goes right along with the end of the world Nazi bunker located in Los Angeles that's still there to this day.
Oh, dude, that thing is so run down.
Yeah.
That's crazy that's even there.
Yeah. Supposedly, there was like a lot of different Silver Age characters, and Captain America supposedly being one of them. I don't know which writer. I'm certain it wasn't the Joe Simon, Jack Kirby team who initially created Captain America, but there's supposedly hidden or thrown away scripts based around the idea that for a while there, it was looking like the Axis powers might win. And some of these characters were supposedly retooled to be very, let's say Man in the High Tower versions of their previous selves.
Wow.
But we can't substantiate that. But it would be crazy to find a fucked up time capsule of like.
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if that's what they were doing. It would make sense.
Yeah, I mean, there may be some merit to it. Who knows?
They want to keep living on in the other fascist regime.
Yeah, from that point on. So yes, once again, World War II defined the golden age of comics, I would say, and afterwards we kind of move into a weird, murky area. Most people take the golden age and jump right into Silver Age, but there's sort of an unspoken, strange, some people call it the space age, some people call it the atomic age, sort of like unspoken era in comics that was more so dominated by not so much superheroes who had fell out of favor after World War II, but was highly concentrated with A, crime comics, and B, horror comics. This is also when Marvel was kind of like doing, or Atlas at the time, was putting out all of their giant monster comics. So this is where like we get the birth of Fin Fang Foom and stuff like that.
Man-Thing?
Well, I think Man-Thing came along in the 70s, but
okay.
I would say
Is that what the giant size so-and-so was based on?
I think
there's a character named Giant Size So-and-so.
Giant Size Man-Thing.
Yeah, that's the name of the book. I think Man-Thing came along in the 70s, but I would definitely say it's still, some people say he's a straight ripoff of Swamp Thing, which to a degree.
He looks like him.
Yeah, but he's got
stop doing that.
He's got a few things that kind of like set him aside. He came along in the 70s, so I would say he's a bit of a Silver Age character as well.
Okay.
So yeah, in this strange era of, predominantly horror and crime comics coming around. Also, I forgot to mention, in the Golden Age, this is when you like saw the production as well, or this is when I believe it started, of what are called Tijuana Bibles, which are basically like, they're like little like drawn up fetish comics where they take like popular characters like Wonder Woman or Betty Boop and put them through very sexually explicit scenarios, etc. And they sold these things to, soldiers and whoever, street urchins,
so the first line out of there is "Tu quieres sex."
You can find more of these type of cartoons on the internet.
Yes, Rule 34. It's a thing. It's been around for a while. Not only that, but there's also a very tangible connection between the mafia with a lot of these early comic book publishing houses, whether it was meant to be a money laundering endeavor or just straight, I don't know.
Too legit to quit business.
Yeah, basically, like there are definite connections between the mafia and the comic book publishing companies of the day. And while we're in this area, you know, the 1950s-ish horror and crime comic boom, that's when you saw like EC Comics, Tales from the Crypt, etc. I think we previously mentioned. This is when the vile worm tongue known as Dr. Frederick Wortham started making us stink. And born Frederick Ignatz Wertheimer, March 20th, 1895 to November 18th, 1981, was a German-American psychiatrist and author. Wortham remains best known for his concern about the effects of violent imagery in mass media and the effect of comic books on the development of children. His best-known book is Seduction of the Innocent, 1954, which asserted that comic books caused youth to become delinquents. Besides Seduction of the Innocent, Wortham also wrote articles and testified before government inquiries into comic books, most notably as part of a U.S. congressional inquiry into the comic book industry. Wortham's work, in addition to the 1954 comic book hearings, led to the creation of the Comics Code Authority, although later scholars cast doubt on his observations. 1935, he testified for the defense in the trial of cannibalistic child rapist and serial killer Albert Fish, declaring him insane. Yeah, no shit. 1946, Wortham opened a clinic. This is boring. Let's get back to Seduction of the Innocent. Keep it on point.
He was the one, I understand, who made the correlation between Batman and Robin being gay.
Yes, a couple things. Let's see here. Seduction of the Innocent described overt or covert depictions of violence, sex, drug use, and other adult fare within quote-unquote crime comics, a term Wortham used to describe not only the popular gangster/murder-oriented titles of the time, but also superhero and horror comics as well, and asserted, based largely on undocumented anecdotes, that reading this material encouraged similar behavior in children, i.e., I'm wearing a cape, I'm Superman, I'm going to jump off a building and fly. If your kid did that, he was probably stupid to begin with.
Going back to the whole, people used to be real fucking stupid back then.
Yeah, yep. And it's, it's nothing's changed, man. Fucking like, no. It's today, it's like Marilyn Manson, Grand Theft Auto. It's not the fact that maybe you should fucking do some parenting. I don't know. I don't have kids, so I guess I can't really weigh in on that subject too much. But comics, especially the crime horror titles pioneered by EC Comics, were not lacking in gruesome images. Wortham reproduced these extensively.
Like this just in from the news desk. In older issues of Iron Man, his suit came complete with a set of rollerblades for when he had to infiltrate skate parks. Back to you.
Wow. Well, I'm glad it wasn't a skateboard. Many of his other conjectures, particularly about hidden sexual themes, e.g. images of female nudity concealed in drawings of muscles and tree bark, or Batman and Robin as gay partners, yes, were met with delusion within the comics industry. Wortham's claims that Wonder Woman had a bondage subtext was somewhat better documented, as her creator, William Moulton Marston, inventor of the lie detector, also member of a polyamorous relationship with several Amazonian women in real life, has admitted as much.
Tell the truth, lady. You love it when I fuck other women.
Jesus. That was harsh. Wortham also claimed that Wonder Woman's strength and independence made her a lesbian. Oh boy. Citing one of Wortham's arguments that 95% of children in reform school read comics proves that comics cause juvenile delinquency. As an example of the well-known logical fallacy, correlation implies causation. Sounds like cart before the horse to me. Stan Lee recounted that Wortham said things that impressed the public, and it was like shouting fire in a theater, but there was little scientific validity to it. And yet, because he had doctor in front of his name, people took what he said seriously, and it started a whole crusade against comics. The splash made by his book, Seduction of the Innocent, and Wortham's previous credentials as an expert witness led to his appearing before the Senate Subcommittee on Juvenile Delinquency, led by anti-crime crusader Estes Kefauver. No idea who that is. Fuck them, they're lost to history. In extensive testimony before the committee, Wortham restated arguments from his book and pointed to comics as a major cause of juvenile crime. Beatty notes, Wortham repeated his call for national legislation based on the public health ideal that would prohibit the circulation and display of comic books to children under the age of 15. The committee's questioning of their next witness, EC publisher William Gaines, also a badass, focused on violent scenes of the type Wortham had described. Though the committee's final report did not blame comics for crime, it recommended that the comics industry tone down its content voluntarily, possibly taking this as a veiled threat of potential censorship of publishers. I just wanted to introduce that comics were at a time considered fucking dangerous, man, and it's crazy to me. I don't know. We still are in that world to a degree. But yeah, that's where you get the Comics Code Authority. So now we're in the Silver Age, and because of the Comics Code Authority, you had superheroes brought back, which is a good thing that came out of that. But you also had the height of ridiculousness. This is about the time that the Flash and Green Lantern started hawking, moon pies and fucking Hostess snack cakes and shit.
As I understand it, the superhero costume comes from the strongmen of the circus as well as the
that is one influence, yes.
The trapeze acts as well.
Yes.
You mean all that stuff is like
the theatrics of it.
100 years old?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I'm definitely.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to touch on a Morrison book later called Flex Mentallo that directly associates with that. But yes, so yeah, that's when the Silver Age comes around. This also happens to be the time that LSD is sweeping through the culture. And
we're not glorifying it. KCI does not advocate the cool crime of LSD consumption.
But yeah, that's where also you start to see very strange psychedelic artwork showing up. Specifically, I would say the two largest contenders were the previously mentioned Steve Ditko and Jack Kirby.
The king.
Yeah. Jacob Kurtzberg.
Ditko.
Yeah. Ditko. Jacob Kurtzberg changed his name to Jack the King Kirby and is known for, if I had to best describe the two, I will do it with a compare-contrast, I guess, between the two men. Whereas Kirby was cosmic, intergalactic, mythological, fucking, gods, the Eternals, or new gods, the Eternals, etc., things like that.
Not to mention one of the most influential writers on other writers.
Oh, yes. And yeah, he's a world builder. He's a myth maker.
So wait, his coaching tree produced a bunch of other writers that we all love and adore today?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he's a huge influence. Yeah, he was also one of the, precursors to popularizing within pop culture the ancient alien theory. He's very much interconnected with that.
Oh, well, that makes me a little upset that he promoted that part.
It's
J-Lo's rolling his eyes.
It's more in the, I'm not saying that he's saying that slaves didn't build the pyramids, fucking aliens did it. I'm saying that he talks about the mysterious surroundings of our origins in this world, the time before time, things like that.
It is kind of strange that we still are obsessed with origin stories. I mean,
we always will be.
Yeah.
Where are we from? Where are we going? These are the things he talked about.
Where are these guys from?
And what invisible influences direct our destiny.
Yeah, it's almost like a child saying, and then what happened?
Yeah.
Then what happened?
Yeah. I mean, that's how you build a story. That's one way.
And what I'm gaining from all of this is that these stories are not that fictitious.
That's true. I mean, and that's another thing we're going to definitely get into a little bit later here is where does the line between fiction and reality stand? Going back to my comparison contrast between Kirby and Ditko, I would say that Ditko is more... Oh boy, okay. He's more of a, if Kirby is among the stars, then Ditko is in the gutters. He has a very pseudo-schizophrenic, paranoid-induced fear of, what invisible energies and forces and entities may be surrounding us at all times. It's a very gritty, urban, the city is alive kind of thing, exerting invisible influences upon us. And he's also very well known for his preoccupation with other worlds and dimensions, which he drew fucking phenomenally and were kind of what popularized him among the counterculture of the time.
Yeah, his style was more advanced than what other people were drawing at the time. And in fact, the more shadows and the more muscle tones and whatnot, and just the more detail, definitely was an influencer on many other artists.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. And, he was known for also creating some of the more colorful villains, especially through Spider-Man. He created most of the well-known Spider-Man rogues gallery up until later when he started flirting with objectivism. Well, flirting, I'll say. it pretty much went on to full P and the V contact from that point. I don't know. He started creating characters like, I do believe he created the Black Cat, as well as the fucking lame throwaway character, the Crime Master, who, like, dudes in suits who were like, he was trying to create more like...
They're fucking red shirts.
Like, yeah, like more reality grounded criminals, because his objectivism started sinking in more and more, and he got very obsessed with the idea of, we'll get into it a little bit. I got a thing about Steve Ditko and objectivism, but keeping in through the timeline.
Objects like women.
Yes, objectionableism, I call it. Yeah, keeping in with the timeline, after the Silver Age.
This just in from the news desk. Breaking news. In the 1980s, the Joker served as the Iranian ambassador to the United Nations. Also, this segment brought to you by J-Lo.
Yes, and so from Golden Age to Atomic Monster, Silver Age, or on to Silver Age. From Silver Age, we go into the Bronze Age, a.k.a. the Dark Age, the deconstructionist period of superheroes, where you get comics like The Watchmen, The Dark Knight Returns, etc. A lot more grim and gritty. And before we hit that point, also the British invasion. But real quick, I'm going to talk about Steve Ditko and his flirtation with objectivism. Like to hear it go. My main source on this is from Strange and Stranger, The World of Steve Ditko. More than anyone, the diminutive female philosopher and writer Ayn Rand defined Ditko's personal and professional life. His adherence to Rand's philosophy, known as objectivism, forever changed his outlook on morality, finance, and his mission as a comic book creator. By immersing himself in Rand's teachings, Ditko started down a path that, ironically, would lead him away from a life of riches and fame. Born in St. Petersburg, Russia in 1905, Rand was permanently affected by the Bolshevik Revolution in 1917. In her eyes, the communist takeover ushered in an era of collectivism and mysticism. Her family's pharmacy was confiscated, forcing them to suffer periods of near starvation. Introduced to American history in her last year of high school, Rand adopted the model of the United States for how nations could live free and prosper. She studied philosophy and history at the University of Petrograd and became increasingly fascinated by American films and plays. After graduating in 1924, she attended the State Institute for Cinema Arts to study screenwriting. Rand was granted a visa to leave Soviet Russia to visit relatives in Chicago. She advised the authorities that her visit would be a short one, but she would never return. After a flirtation with Hollywood, she decided on a career of writing fiction. Her second book and first success was The Fountainhead. The novel was about the struggles of an uncompromising architect named Howard Rourke against a collective society with regressive, inconsistent views on art, morality, and commerce. In 1946, Rand began work on her signature novel, Atlas Shrugged. It tells the tale of John Galt, one of the greatest minds on Earth, removing himself and his services, and bringing along other great minds as well, to a Mount Olympus-like hideaway. The motive was to withhold their creations from society until it was able to respect the values of individualism and laissez-faire economics. For Rand, these were the very ideas that inspired creators to achieve greatness, with the reward being ownership and control and the ability to profit from their work. When she finished the novel, she had the foundational groundwork for a philosophical movement called objectivism. Her philosophy was based on the principles of rationalism and individualism, and a belief that art should mirror one's own personal beliefs. She coined the term A is A to illustrate man's consciousness should be devoted to perceiving reality, not inventing it or creating it. Note, the problem here is, who the fuck gets to dictate what exactly this objective reality is or how it functions? If Rand and the objectivists had it their way, reality would essentially boil down to, fuck you, I got mines, and that all the people in the world plagued by poverty, prejudice, mental health issues, etc., well, it's just their own damn fault that they can't pull themselves up by the very same bootstraps of the boots they don't even fucking own in the first place. Hey, where'd you get those boots? Police, quick. Beat the shit out of that boot thief. Etc., etc. But I digress. Dismissing any belief in the supernatural, she argued that reason allowed man to fully comprehend the facts of reality, rejecting any notion of mysticism, skepticism, faith, or feeling was a path to knowledge. Talk of decisions being predetermined, whether from some higher power, upbringing, heredity, or social structures, i.e. systematic racism, generational wealth, etc., was anathema. Objectivism was completely opposed to the politically left-leaning ethos of help thy fellow man, known as altruism. Note, again, this is the Writers Association, whereas most good and decent people would see altruism as being one of the very few redeeming qualities of humanity and or simply being the good/right thing to do. Rand argued that the most productive society would be the one in which a man's greatest contribution came from working for his own rational self-interest. Achieving one's own happiness was the highest moral purpose. Note, it actually sounds a lot like what most evangelical types commonly confuse and or misperceive being the reasoning behind Aleister Crowley's whole do what thou wilt is the whole of the law philosophy. Likely because that alone bolsters their own satanic Illuminati Hollywood elites are hiding under the bed and definitely in the closet style worldview, who never bother to read the following statement that love is the law, love under will. Being that I currently know almost next to nothing of Rand's specific history, it sounds more like she's describing the so-called 1% of this world.
It's interesting that this female is helping usher in the patriarchy.
Yeah, it is. And especially from her background. Oh boy.
Yeah.
Yes, being that I currently know almost next to nothing of Rand's specific history, it sounds more like she's describing the so-called 1% of this world, and so, in the style of that new great American pastime of wildly misinformed speculation towards the creation of some all-new conspiracy theory, I hereby posit my baseless assumption that Rand was nothing more but a communist agent sent here to encapsulate and advertise the absolute worst aspects of capitalism in a shiny business-suited philosophy of me for the eventual 1980s Alex P. Keaton, hip young Republican, coked-up Gordon Gekko Wall Street executive types, just not all that hyped up or into the 1960s hippy-dippy version of me, the quote-unquote countercultural revolution who failed due to truly being far too interested in drugs and fucking than affecting any potential societal changes, as they all eventually grew up to become the exact same 80s scumfucks mentioned above. But it's exactly the me mentality that left the world your children and your children's children now have the honor of attempting to unfuck. But so it goes, as they say. Hey, you know who didn't like drugs and fucking? Steve Ditko, allegedly. Already a strange, gangly, sickly, awkward fella throughout much of his formative years, to say Ditko was an odd duck is enough impetus for real odd ducks to institute some form of waterfowl anti-defamation league. The best way I can describe his style is somewhat grimy, uneasy feeling being interlaced throughout much of his visual narratives, especially his much earlier non-superhero, horror, or crime stories. His is a reality that was somehow, in some way, unknowable to us, a predatory being, leaping out from out of the shadows without a moment's notice, only for the sole reason of simply reminding you that it can fuck with you any and every time it just decides or chooses to do so. When one-time writing partner and boss Stanley Lieberman, better known by his Hollywood-friendly handle of Stan Lee, would notice more and more of Ditko's objectivist views sluicing through his Spider-Man work, he eventually called him on his bullshit, essentially saying, hey, we're here to make entertainment, not provide you with a soapbox for your goddamn socio-political gospels. This was the beginning of the end for Ditko and Marvel. Another account by one of the infamous Marvel bullpen secretaries states that after this incident, when Ditko handed in his scripts, then quipped, well, on to the next one. They replied, oh, so there's going to be a next one? Even though they were just kidding with Ditko, a superior came immediately up to them afterwards and said, well, listen, you got to be careful what you say to a guy like Steve, because he'll be going home on the subway and suddenly start thinking if you meant anything by that or knew something he didn't. In a sense, this perfectly illustrates what an irate pain in the ass, always got to be walking on eggshells around him, voted most likely to go postal, overly sensitive co-worker that Ditko was slowly becoming. There's one in every office. Case in point, during the writing of Spider-Man, Ditko's objectivist influences would subtly begin to creep in when he soon began to identify with, if not outright deify, policemen. Publisher Ron France would eventually reminisce of an anecdote in which one of Ditko's Charlton Comics colleagues, Pete Morrissey, who was a police officer by day and moonlit as a comic book artist by night, would have a chance encounter with Ditko in '67. Ditko told Morrissey he envied him because he would enjoy the opportunity to arrest criminals. Ditko's evolving philosophy and views would eventually go on to make Morrissey feel, quote-unquote, uncomfortable. France says, to the best of my knowledge, they never spoke again. Ditko's obsession with, quote-unquote, crime fighting began to show itself within his first year as the primary plotter of Spider-Man comics, by the way of introducing more and more down-to-earth, far less fantastical criminal elements such as the Black Cat or Crime Master. Boo. It's not too many years later that he would eventually see Alan Moore's satirical lampooning of Ditko's views as through those espoused via the unhinged vigilante Rorschach of Watchmen fame. That character also, too, being something of a spoof upon one of Ditko's more popular runs on a character known as The Question. The Question, along with Captain Atom and Blue Beetle, all Charleston characters, who for Ditko exemplified the ideal range.
Wait. Time out. Wait. The Blue Beetle?
Yeah.
Wasn't that a fucking Scooby-Doo?
No.
What was Blue Falcon was Scooby-Doo?
Blue Falcon, yeah.
Okay. I just needed to double check.
I thought you were going to mention like the new one who's basically a Guyver ripoff. Yeah, The Question, along with Captain Atom and Blue Beetle, who for Ditko exemplified the ideal Randian heroes, at least as he wrote them, would also go on to act as the templates for Dr. Manhattan and Night Owl, respectively, with The Question being the prototype for what would eventually become one of Ditko's most, if not the most overtly Randian vigilantes, Mr. A, who in the 60s would drop one of his villains off a building, an act that caught him quite a bit of flack from both the industry and fans, and actually further solidifies the equivalency of being associated with a character like Rorschach. Watchmen creator Alan Moore, something of a character himself, would however later state that while their views on heroism stood leagues apart, he did respect Ditko for introducing new characters into the comics medium who at the very least had strongly held beliefs and convictions about actual real-life socio-political issues, and that this set him apart from many of his contemporaries. Denny O'Neill's Green Arrow, looking at you, buddy.
Breaking news from the news desk. Powdered Toast Man of Ren and Stimpy fame officially appeared in the Marvel Universe, scoring off against one and only Spider-Man. Back to you.
I wanted to point out that it's the irony, like I'm thinking of John Byrne's Superman in 1985, where he created or he re-envisioned Lex Luthor as a mogul, as a business mogul instead of just a science,
like a mad scientist.
Evil scientist, yeah. And Superman, of course, is often used as an icon of the United States.
Oh yes.
And so what John Byrne was saying was the greatest threat to the United States is this objectivist.
Yeah, corporate oligarchy. Who was it that eventually, was this in the same time frame when Luthor became president of the United States as well? Or was that much later?
That was much later.
Okay. Yes, Alan Moore, he said, I have to say, I found Ayn Rand's philosophies laughable. It was a white supremacist dream of the master race, burnt in an early 20th century form. They seem to be the kind of ideas that people would espouse, people who might secretly believe themselves to be part of the elite and not part of the excluded majority. I would basically disagree with all of Ditko's ideas, but he has to be given credit for at least expressing these political ideas. And that is where we jump right into the Dark Ages.
Also known as the Bronze Age.
Yes, the Bronze Age. The resurrection, I will say. The turn away from most of that grim and gritty. Not entirely, but much of it. With what is known as the British invasion. And this is where we're going to talk about some of our favorite authors and some of the works of theirs that we highly recommend you check out. J-Lo, I'm going to kick that over to you.
First off is Alan Moore, and he got some notoriety by writing his version of Swamp Thing.
Yes, awesome run.
It was an awesome run with the Floronic Man, which is what that series, used that came on the DC channel and then later HBO Max.
Yeah, I wish they'd actually gone through and showed the Floronic Man on that.
That was a good rig, the way they set that show up, man.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I have a nice quote that relates right back to what we were just talking about from this character who had basically funded the Floronic Man, i.e. Swamp Thing's
Dr. Jason Woodrue.
Yes, Dr. Jason Woodrue, yeah. Anyway, he's talking to Dr. Jason Woodrue, and he says, I am not, in your terms, an intelligent man. I am merely shrewd. Being merely shrewd has secured me a vast financial empire, has enabled me to watch while cleverer men went penniless to their graves. How poignant and how does that relate to today?
Right into the whole objectivist philosophy. Yeah, like I said, in my quick editorial notes peppered in there, it's very much, I would call it the new age hip guru philosophy of fucking the Illuminati, if they have such a thing, like rich dad, poor dad for the Illuminati, stuff like that.
Oh, man.
But yeah, Alan Moore, two of the things that he's done, everyone, I'm sure if you're a comic fan, knows Watchmen. Brilliant deconstruction of the superhero genre, Also, one of the more poignant, Dr. Manhattan, the character, is able to basically transcend time and see things in the fourth dimension. And I think that like the way that Alan Moore portrayed that ability within the comic and how things are happening through time, but all at once for the character is pretty brilliant. So it boggles my mind of how to like even sit down and think of how to like express 4D perception, but he pulled it off.
I liked how he made Dr. Manhattan less and less human.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. And that's another thing that like they don't really touch on with a lot of these things because, I mean, I don't know. Superman plays with it here and there. One of the reasons I love Spider-Man so much is because he's more the everyday guy. Mm-hmm. Like, that's his appeal. But yeah, two other series by Moore. One I wanted to touch on is Promethea. That book is basically, or that series altogether, collectively, is essentially like a how to do magic book. It touches on like the Kabbalah, tarot cards, astrology. Like it's kind of a primer, but it's set up with this sort of like Wonder Woman-esque character who represents, she's like the living embodiment of Imagination Land, the avatar, the ambassador of it, if you will, into our world. Another series by him I fucking absolutely love is From Hell. The movie did it no justice because it doesn't touch on so many of the kooky, crazy concepts running through it. Once again, the fourth dimension plays into that book very much. There's also this whole overriding occult conspiracy that includes Jack the Ripper, who is part of a Freemasonic conspiracy to essentially, they view Britain as Britannia, as like a female spirit, and like killing these prostitutes sort of constitutes an overarching mega ritual that draws a fucking pentagram around London.
Well, let me ask you this, Mike. When has it not?
When has what not? What?
When has not doing that?
What?
When has not doing that benefited?
When has not doing what? Killing prostitutes?
Yeah.
I mean, don't do it. Prostitutes.
It's not good. Prostitutes are people too.
Yeah. They provide a service.
A nice one.
Decriminalize
Sorry, I'm just
it.
Playing devil's advocate here on.
Okay.
Fair enough.
Basically, yeah, killing all those prostitutes and Jack the Ripper being like a proto serial killer is like a large mega ritual to instill fear forever in like the fucking unknown, unidentified mass killer murderer, and B, exert like this Freemasonic male centric power over the spirit of Britannia. And it plays into, they talk about Boudica and like the obelisks, and there's all these like occult history of Britain. It's a fucking awesome book, way better than the movie. I highly recommend it.
How does
all the important stuff got omitted in the movie?
Yeah, pretty much.
How does Boudica fall into it?
Because she was one of the female warriors, like that is sort of an archetype upon which Britannia, you know, like the Statue of Liberty is like Lady Liberty. It's these sort of spirit archetypes and gods and goddesses that are unofficial in a way.
I mean, she was a queen.
Well, yeah, but she plays into the whole archetypal female Britannia goddess character. She's like an aspect of it, so they say. Like how also Princess Diana is kind of considered
in the same vein.
Yeah, it plays into the whole like Diana, the ancient moon goddess, and there's all these like occult, spiritual, archetypal, mythological, folkloric connections.
Right on. One important aspect about Moore is his use of magic.
Yes. I don't know if he considers himself a straight up chaos magician. I know he's into like the more ritual aspects of like pre-existing systems, as mentioned before with Promethea, like Kabbalah, tarot, astrology, things like that. These like, you know, ancient systems that go way back. But yeah, I think it's helped him creatively, as it has another fellow we're going to talk about here in a minute.
Just real quick, if you want to check out some more, especially some hot sports opinions coming from Alan Moore himself, check out the documentary, The Mindscape of Alan Moore.
Yeah.
2003.
I do have to mention fair play. Moore became a bit of a bastard for a while there. I don't know if he still
did talk a lot of shit about a lot of contemporaries.
Yeah.
He did that.
He got, I don't know, maybe, I don't know. I don't want to say anything.
He's just trying to throw down.
Yeah, I don't want to say anything bad about the dude. Just, he said some stuff he really had no fucking call to say. Anywho, anything else on Alan Moore, J-Lo?
He paved the way for our
next guy.
I think the biggest guy.
Yeah, man, we wanted to do a whole episode on this fucking guy, but God, it's hard to reel in. So the one and only, the incomparable cosmic guru himself, Mr. Grant Morrison, Sir Grant Morrison, excuse me.
What? Whoa, he defends the kingdom?
Didn't know he was was knighted.
He was knighted by the Queen not too long ago.
Wow.
Holy shit.
Yep.
Wow.
Man, okay.
It comes with pay.
It does?
I don't know, maybe.
It should.
But he's going to have to write a great story to defend the kingdom.
Oh, he already did.
Many times over.
Be like a goddamn Ian Fleming over there, but like way more ingenuitive, I'm sure.
I want to touch on some of there's the big one. We'll get to that last, I guess.
Easy. But, Mike, I got breaking news coming in right now. Down here's the news desk. The world's largest comic book collection is housed in the Library of Congress, totaling over 100,000 comic books. And appearing from out of nowhere on my monitor here at the bunker, it would appear that Cornelius has just been struck by lightning. Mike, do you think that he'll get superpowers like in that Travolta movie?
He'll probably get the power to shit his pants and shake uncontrollably.
Well, that's something.
I hope he gets the power to clean better.
Clean up after himself. So yeah, Morrison, let's kick it off. We got to give a shout out to 2000 AD. Because that's, I think, where this British invasion shit started, pretty much.
Yep.
It's been around forever. It's got cool shit. Judge Dredd, Johnny Alpha, the Strontium Dog, fucking, yeah, man, lots of cool shit. Zombo, it's where another guy, Al Ewing, one of my favorites, who now works for Marvel, got his start. But yeah.
Morrison created the first superhero from 2000 AD.
That's right. Zenith, fucking awesome story, man. It takes superheroes and combines it with Nazi experimentation, Lovecraftian elder gods, countercultural figures as superheroes. Man, it's pretty fucking awesome. It's like a secret, well, not secret. It's more like if celebrities were superheroes and like the history of the world from like World War II on, because it kind of, it's like a, and he does this with another book that's one of my absolute favorites of all time, Flex Mentallo, Man of Muscle Mystery. He basically like lays out the history of the world as according to the history of comics, starting Golden Age, Silver Age, etc., and kind of has real life events mirror the procession of comic books and how they evolved to where they are now. Flex Mentallo is straight up a fucking love letter to comic books, and the artist on it, Frank Quitely, quite frankly, is one of the best fucking artists I have ever seen. He's one of my favorites. He does the art duties on it. A lot of, God, it's filled with just one-off superheroes. Fucking Lord Limbo, Gentleman Ape, like all these like characters that he created just for it. And it's much like most of Morrison's work. It's just like jam-packed with all these fucking awesome ideas and concepts. I don't know. It's almost one of those kind of works that makes you want to like put it down for a second, get on the internet and like look up like what he's talking about and like find all this cool shit.
He is so out there, it's hard to keep up a lot of times. You have to really kind of explore what he was like, what he's talking about when he was, or what he was thinking when he was writing the books in order to understand it.
Yeah, he definitely is a self-professed chaos magician. He's also allegedly been abducted by aliens. On
Who hasn't?
Yeah,
Kathmandu.
Yeah. He's a self-professed chaos magician. He's been abducted by aliens. He's experimented with psychedelics, much like all of us, I think.
Not until he was 30.
Yeah, that's
Starting
true.
with alcohol, a pint of different kinds of alcohol.
It's very responsible of him to wait that long.
Well, he was forced to. He was in a like a boarding school until he was 19.
Yeah, and he was all about like, I think he was like straight up comics till he hit that era.
Yep.
Till he hit 30.
Yeah.
Yep.
Because if you read Flex Mentallo, the bit of it is also like very autobiographical about him himself, sort of worked into the story. It's fucking awesome. Very emotional, but also at the same time just outrageously fucking Kirby cosmic craziness.
I wanted to point out that there's a big difference, though. Although Grant Morrison and Alan Moore were both practicing magicians, the approach that Grant Morrison took was the opposite of Alan Moore's to comics, in that he wanted to bring reality into the larger-than-life comic book world.
Yeah, I was about to say, Grant Moore, during the English invasion, and Irish, we'll say, yeah, Grant Morrison did his first American work, I believe, for DC, or at least his big main work was Animal Man. And that's where he first started experimenting with like metafictions and the blending of reality with fiction and illusion, etc. Like where does the demarcation end and begin?
Grant Morrison himself said in the documentary Talking with Gods that he took this approach. I'm the bard who writes you, but it's like I got to create drama, so I got to kill your family.
Yeah. Like, he actually apologized to Animal Man, and, you know, a lot of it's like very heartfelt, and it plays into ideas of like Gnosticism and religion and the origin of man and the creation of man and things like that, and like what a god must think, you know, maybe to a degree. Very cyclical, let's call it microcosm, macrocosm of ideas if you kind of apply it to our world. Arkham Asylum, man, he through Arkham Asylum, another big book of his. It's a Batman joint.
If you don't know,
he basically applied these entire like psychological world building narratives into the like psyches of certain supervillains, and it's very fucking awesome. Artist Dave McKean, super fucking awesome artist, very, very appropriately chosen for that book.
So he's a keen artist.
Oh yeah, McKean. All-Star Superman, a fucking must.
A fucking must for everybody. It should be in schools. This is forced to read.
Yeah. Seriously. This is the ideal Superman. Like, this is like, I believe one of the ideas behind it, he was at a comic convention and there's a gentleman dressed up like Superman just sitting on a curb, like talking to someone. And he's like, man, that's fucking Superman right there. And there's a scene in the book where a girl is contemplating suicide on the edge of a building. And Superman has this really like sweet talk, man. It touches on a lot of it humanizes Superman, but really it also like portrays him as like, this is what we all should all aspire to be. Like that Superman represents the best in all of us.
I loved how he put that Superman could only be good.
Yeah. Yeah, because later in I don't want to spoil it.
I don't want to spoil it. Yeah.
Just read it.
Yeah.
It's definitely.
It's at the end.
Yeah, and then he had a very legendary JLA run, Justice League of America, which was titled JLA, but he had a very interesting idea that he has sort of been a champion behind this idea. He's not the first to posit it, but he basically built the roster of the Justice League. He used the template of the Olympian gods. So, you know, Superman is Zeus, Wonder Woman is Hera, Hades is Batman, Dionysus, the trickster god, is Plastic Man, you know, et cetera, et cetera. Hermes or Mercury is the Flash, you know. You could see a lot of like very cogent, tangential connections, like of where these gods from back in the day act as the archetypes for modern myth. And
I was just about to say that.
Yeah, oh man, fucking awesome. And I guess that sort of leads us into the biggie, the Invisibles.
The Invisibles.
Holy shit, this man... You may not know it. Even if you've never heard of or read The Invisibles, this book changed the world.
It did.
I very rarely say a book changed my life because I feel like it's a douchey thing to say, but this book did change my life. After I read the first one that I bought, I went back and I immediately stole the rest of the ones that I, at the time, couldn't afford. I still feel bad for it this day, but I've sunk a lot of money into that comic book store, so I think I made up for it. Anywho, if anyone was going to steal a book,
it would be The Invisibles.
Yeah. This is a book. Basically, the premise is take every conspiracy theory you ever heard, and it turns out they're true. Some truer than others, some falser than others. But what it boils down to is that somewhere out there in the world is a kick-ass fucking A-team, crack commando squad of anarchist fucking, I hesitate to say superheroes, but they're close. And they're fighting the conspiratorial forces of the demiurge and the archons and the evil fucking alien overlords who secretly want to...
We have breaking news down here at the KCIP news desk.
Yeah.
It would appear that Cornelius has risen from his previous electrocution spot and is wandering around the grounds.
I'm just going to fire Cornelius. I don't.
He appears to have the face of a cheese pizza and is making noises like Peter Lorre.
So nothing happened to him, in other words?
He seems to be fine. Oh, that sounds like he's outside the door.
Cornelius, go away. Change your diaper.
Back to you at the news desk.
So yeah, you have these badass anarchist fucking superheroes, more or less, fighting against the alien overlords who control our reality and want to feed off of our souls, fucking keep us down, tell us we're weak, that we're nothing, that we're less than nothing. Basically, every shitty, bad thing that happens in the world is basically the fault of these archons, these overlords, and fucking it's up to the Invisibles, these badass anarchist fucking superheroes, to save the day and smash the conspiracy. But there are all kinds of different twists, like who, I don't know, who, see, and this is, once again, we had to do spoiler alerts, man. I just can't tell you enough that you need to check this fucking book out. Oh my, The Invisibles. What else can I say about it? J-Lo?
It's awesome.
Yeah, that's really, without giving too much away, seriously, check it out.
So I got a question about The Invisibles real quick.
Yeah.
So I've heard a rumor that there was a movie with Keanu Reeves in it.
Yes.
Slightly based.
Good thing you brought that up. Yeah, there was actually, the last I heard, The Matrix was supposedly a ripoff of The Invisibles, but I've also heard stories that The Matrix screenplay was written well before The Invisibles and went through several changes. But I mean, really, I would say the comparisons are superficial in that one of the whole like unifying underlying themes is quote unquote reality is not reality. There's a whole other world, and that's the true reality.
So they're just saying that the concepts are so similar that one may beget the other, or
basically, and then like you have like a ragtag group of badass, you know, whatever.
Oh, that one dude got cut up pretty good in the first one, so
that's an idea taken from Gnosticism, which is something we'll get into that later down the road in another episode. But one more thing about The Invisibles that I cannot neglect to mention: the entire series, the whole fiction experiment itself,
all
that is in fact a hypersigil. The whole book is a ritual. And every time you read it, you're enacting the ritual. You're taking part in the ritual. Reading that book is a magic spell. And basically, the best way I can relate it, there's an anecdote from when the series first came out. It was considered very Vertigo-esque. It was very Neil Gaiman Sandman, another high-ranking member of the British Invasion of Comics. And people were like, hey, we've seen this before. So the series was on the verge of getting canceled. And because it was like into all these conspiracy theories and weird subcultures of, you know, fetishes and just strange shit, when it was on the verge of getting canceled, Grant Morrison, who regularly talked to the fans in the letters columns of the original single issues, said, shit, we're about to get canceled maybe. Here's what I need everyone to do. Wank off. I need you to go out there and crank one out or flick your bean, because the orgasmic orgone energy will accumulate. Just think about the book when you pop, and the orgone energy or whatever it is will write the universe and keep the book going. And you know what? It did. All these people wrote in, they're like, yeah, I did it. Is the book canceled? No, it's still going.
Wow, that's a lot of house building going on there.
Exactly. World building.
Yeah, I was going to say, they built a world and it's still around.
But yeah, Morrison himself has frequently stated that every time you read the book, it's different, which is true. I found that to be true. You notice more things that you didn't notice before, or you concentrate on a different aspect of the fiction.
But that's all perspective, man. It's when you fall in love with a song, right? Like you assign value to it because there's something going on in your life that you attach yourself to.
Yeah, memory attaches to songs, things like that. Yeah,
the song didn't change, you did.
Where you were in your life, exactly. Yeah, and he sort of like plays with that concept.
It's like he's drawing the magic out of life. Into it.
There's a concept that he plays with in the book called fiction suits, and there's certain characters that like aren't really fleshed out all that greatly, but they're designed to be that way on purpose because they're meant to act as avatars for you, the reader, to sort of plug yourself into,
like your own adventure book.
Sort of, yeah. He doesn't really like the script is very set out and the story is very set out. But yeah, the whole book is very much just a mass ritual. And I find the concept very intriguing because one of the ideas behind the mass ritual was to essentially make the world more like the Invisibles book. So you have more people like, into conspiracy theories, believing in aliens and weird shit. And Grant Morrison, I think it worked. And are you happy with what you've done?
I hope so.
The world is, going more that way and becoming more mainstream, ufology. That's not necessarily, it's a horse and cart thing, but it's very intriguing nonetheless.
Also, open invitation to the show.
Oh, yeah, always to my life. Quick, one of his books I wanted to mention, The Filth. The Filth, he's described it as essentially the Invisibles for people who have to pay for sex. It's not glamorous. It's not glitzy. These are people who live in the gutters and have weird fetishes, etc. And the whole book plays with the idea of the Qliphoth, which is like the opposite side of the tree of life in Kabbalah. So if the Kabbalah is basically like the emanation of the first divine creator energy sprinkled down through various realms of creation into where we live in our reality. The reverse side of that is basically the dark matter, the dark energy, the leftover shit of creation that you would consider demons or, evil spirits, etc. And that also have an integral part in creating our reality. There's a map of reality that shows up in the Invisibles quite often. It's a Venn diagram of two circles. And you have Universe A, which more or less is, for lack of a better term, heaven. And then Universe B, which is hell, essentially. And they overlap, and that's where we live. That's our reality. So a lot of intriguing concepts, man, just pouring with it. Oh.
Fantastic documentary on Grant Morrison is called Grant Morrison Talking with Gods. I got it for $5 on Amazon. Just saying.
Yeah, worth checking out. Also, his book, Super Gods. He takes the idea of mythology, like comic book superheroes, etc., as modern mythology and basically runs it to its like logical extent as almost like the best way I can describe it as years and years from now after the nuclear fallout. Maybe people will find Superman comics and be like, oh my God, this is like, the Dead Sea Scrolls. Is this like something that people, worshipped or practiced? Was this a real man? Think of it that way.
Breaking news from the KCIP news desk. It's come to our attention that the Iliad apparently was the first comic book ever written in the Western Hemisphere.
I can see that.
Back to you.
Oh boy. So, in continuing with the British invasion, here's a quick one I just have to get out the way real quick. Mr. Irishman Garth Ennis wrote one of the quintessential runs on the Punisher. You will never, ever root for a psychopath as much as you have reading that book.
Also, it has the most messed up stuff I have ever seen, and I was in the army.
Yeah, he actually, seeing as how the Punisher normally kills most of his enemies, he does quite a good job of building a sort of rogues gallery for the Punisher. And yes, most of them do die horrible deaths, but they deserve it. You'll be rooting for him to like fucking destroy these people because they're so sick and just awful. But yeah, he's essentially like built a modern rogues gallery for the Punisher, which most people thought was a thing that couldn't be done. Also wrote Preacher, big one.
Was it his run on Punisher where Punisher fed a guy to a shark?
Yes. Yeah. That was actually a fellow by the name of Barracuda who actually ended up being one of like the big reoccurring villains in that series. I think he was sort of visually based off of Debo from Friday. He's a fucking psychopath as well. It's very highly entertaining read. And Preacher, which is something of it's a damn good book. It's very much a product of its time, though. It had some things about it haven't aged well. And the TV show they did of it was good, but they changed a lot of it up to keep the story fresh. So people who had read the series won't, completely know what's going to happen next. But Ennis is very good at writing just over the top, offensive,
graphic,
hilarious stories.
Jesus, that bald fucker that runs the factory, and they go travel back in time in the show to show you exactly what made him a bastard. The entire family out at once.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
the meat packing guy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, wow, that's, man, goddamn, I can only imagine.
Dude, that character was much more fucked up in the book. Oh, my God.
I feel like they kind of left out a lot of the parts where he just kept getting fucked up.
Oh, yeah. Hair Star. Yes.
That's the one.
Yeah.
That's what I'm looking
Hair
for.
Star is one of the best villains, dude. Fucking like, yeah, in the book, the more and more fucked up he gets, like, he just becomes more monstrous. And like, there's one scene where like one of his subordinates like declares her undying love for him, and he just says pig shit and like pulls out a gun and like shoots these like files over and over that she brought to him, and he's like, "That's what I think you're love." And just, oh man, it's a fucking hilarious read, man. Like, yeah, he becomes increasingly unhinged and monstrous, and Ennis is very good at that type of character building. My comic book nerd voice on. Shit, who else? There's another gentleman who is in a bit of trouble recently. I'm not going to go into it, but sometimes you have to separate the art from the artist, and that man is Warren Ellis. He's one of my favorites. I hope eventually he gets back to creating work, back into comics, and I'm going to leave it at that. But he did write a book called Planetary, which I highly recommend. It sort of goes through the ideas of the phases of superheroes and developments, how we talked from Victoriana to pulp to Golden Age and onward. And he also throws in other genres like Hong Kong action flicks and Godzilla and kaiju movies, and sort of like all these sort of subdivisions of science fiction and like a secret history of the 21st century.
Is it like he's showing a like a degradation, or is it a?
No, it's just a secret history. Basically, he like shows all this stuff that contributes to the overall weirdness of the particular. I believe it was the Wildstorm universe that these characters were at the time set in.
I haven't heard that name in a long time.
Yeah, that's all pretty much been incorporated into DC at this point, into their main universe.
Remember when we had all their toys?
Yeah, I do.
Wild, yeah.
What else? Oh, Dr. Sleepless was another book by him that's very good. It goes into a lot of his... He's a big guy on like transhumanism and futurist thought. It's very intriguing, a lot of cool, weird ideas in it. And this brings us to my absolute favorite book by this man, The Authority. Soon to be made into a major motion picture, I believe, last I heard. The Authority was basically, what if superheroes were proactive? What if they hunt down the real bastards in this world? It is hyper-violent.
And kill them.
Yeah, exactly. Judge, jury, executioner. It is hyper-violent. It's what he described as widescreen comics. He very much had movies in mind when he and artist Howard Porter laid out the first, I believe, 12 issues. These are like, this is again playing with like big archetype characters, someone who can control all technology, or the global shaman of Earth who basically is the speaker for our planet.
Or Santa.
There is a Christmas special where they cross over with Lobo, and I do believe they kill Santa.
Which, hey, J-Lo, what was it that Santa left in the bunker?
I completely forgot. What did he leave?
He left a box here for you. I was just curious.
I forgot about that box. I opened another box and it had a fire extinguisher in it. Then I opened another box and it had a check for somebody else.
Well, I saw that.
Well, that's really strange.
Yeah, it is.
A little bit. Who the fuck's sending you fire extinguishers and paychecks?
Somebody who knows something we don't, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe it's from the future.
The future.
In the future, I'm a firefighter.
But The Authority, after Ellis's spectacular, phenomenal, fantastical run, was picked up by a fella by the name of Mark Millar.
Woo woo.
And that's where I'm going to kick it to you, my friend.
Mark Millar. Where do I even start with this beautiful man? All right, I'll start where I read him first, and that was The Ultimates.
Yeah.
His run on, of course, the ultimate version of the Avengers. Very dark, very gritty. Bunch of superheroes who work for the government and are, much like the Authority, not afraid to kill.
Yeah. I actually think that book is like one of the main impetus behind the creation of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Like, if that book never came out, I don't think the Marvel Cinematic Universe would be the fucking steamrolling juggernaut that it's become. Once we hit phase Omega,
I don't think so either.
Watch out. The world's going to end.
One thing I wanted to mention about Mark Millar is that he actually wrote 3 entire movies for Superman.
Oh, that's
that
right.
never got picked up, and I wish they would, because it ends.
Ooh.
It ends with the Man of Tomorrow standing on a lifeless Earth. That he has just lived through.
He's like the only thing left.
Yeah, he's the only thing left over.
The Omega Man.
And it's kind of the burden of the god.
Yeah, he's done some very like nihilistic, like violent stuff, like he did with The Authority.
Kick-Ass.
Yeah,
Wanted.
Kick-Ass, Wanted. The fucking movie of Wanted, man, they dropped the coolest concept out of it all is that it was supposed to be like the secret society of supervillains, not some like, I don't know, hot, sexy assassins or whatever. Like they actually had a dude named Shithead who was like a giant Clayface-like monster made of literal feces. Like all these cool fucking supervillains that like
shit demon.
Yeah, like it was like the Illuminati of supervillains who hop from reality to reality and like take shit over. That's a fucking awesome concept that they could have got a lot of mileage out of, but whatever. He's got a deal with Netflix now that's in and out. I'm not quite sure what, but they're like going to be producing most of his stuff. Like there was
Miller
that,
World.
Yeah,
What it says here on Wikipedia.
there was a TV show not too long ago that I think did okay. I mean, I remember it being just
Was it
okay. No, but there were alien life forms in it. Millar is also really good at writing these sort of majestical 1980s Steven Spielberg, like coming of age tales, like
Billy and the Dinosaur.
kind of like the Goonies meets superhero type stuff. It's really good. And if I had to recommend at this point one overall Mark Millar book above anything else, my hat is going in the ring for a little ditty called Nemesis. It's got a 5-parter at the beginning, and they're just wrapped up a second 5-parter. But the underlying concept is, what if Bruce Wayne was a total fucking asshole and like a criminal? Basically, like if Batman were a bad guy and he had all this fucking money to just cause chaos and fucking just wreak havoc on the world.
It's scary because it has parallels in reality.
Yes, it does. It's very, and oh man, like without giving too much plot away, in the second series, he actually like busts up on the fucking like broadcast waves in Los Angeles and tells the entire city of Los Angeles, who has a very bad history in relation to their police officers, from what I understand of history. And he tells the city of Los Angeles, hey, everyone, I will offer you $10,000 for every dead policeman you bring to my fucking super secret fucking, well, not secret, but hideout lair that I just took over this fucking giant building. Basically puts a bounty out on all police officers and just turns the city into a fucking like never-ending riot that's just fucking eating itself. But yeah, and then there's I don't want to give too much away, but there's also something about a potential Illuminati satanic cult angle. I don't know. Read it. It's worth it. It's a fucking badass action comic. I'll say that.
Some of his other famous works are Superior.
Yes, that falls into the Steven Spielberg 1980s kind of wondery kids stuff, coming of age stuff.
Breaking news from the KCIP news desk.
Oh, it's not about Cornelius, is it?
No,
Okay.
he is locked away.
Good.
We're not bringing him back.
Okay.
Michael Jackson wanted to play Spider-Man in a movie so badly he tried to buy Marvel Comics in the 1990s. Also, in the 1940s, comic book superhero called Red Bee fought the Nazis using trained bees.
I know Red Bee.
His favorite bee was named Michael and lived in the Red Bee's belt buckle.
Yeah.
How inconveniently fucking weird.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Back to you.
Other of his works include Super Crooks, The Secret Service, Jupiter's Legacy.
That
The
was
Secret Cervix.
Jupiter's Legacy was the Netflix show I was trying to think of. I couldn't remember.
Wait,
okay.
didn't Jupiter's Legacy? Yeah, okay, yeah. They made that into a thing. Didn't what's her ovaries get in there? God damn it, Meg. Mila Kunis.
No.
Wasn't she in Jupiter's Legacy?
That's some other movie that has nothing to do with it.
That's no.
That was some piece of shit movie that no one saw.
Yeah.
Except you, apparently.
I just saw the trailer.
Okay. I think they're making a sequel to it. I could be wrong on that.
They can add a part 2 to something that terrible?
Well, it happens all the time.
Oh, man.
And they make 2 Dude, Where's My Cars? I don't know.
They made like 8 of those.
What the fuck is Hollywood thinking? Anyways.
Just as a personal note to the show members here, we're at 122.45.
All right, let's kick out the rest of it with some of our favorite writers that we didn't get to cover.
If you like crime fiction, I highly recommend one Mr. Ed Brubaker, especially his runs on Captain America, especially his run on Daredevil, and especially his creator-owned series, Criminal.
Word. Some of my favorite include Brian Michael Bendis, Jason Aaron.
Yes, Jason Aaron is awesome.
Our very own Donnie Cates.
Yep, hometown boy.
And Jeff Johns and Matt Fraction.
Oh, man, Jeff Johns. Fucking, yeah. He's got something cooking up right now that I'm really interested in called The Unknown War. It's building bit by bit that it looks to be shaping up into something quite awesome. But yeah, this is our episode that is the official love letter to comic books. We wanted to cover a lot of these authors and artists, but man, there's just
so much.
Yeah, like, so we decided to just shotgun blast it.
Round table discussion. Who is your favorite superhero / who do you identify with the most?
Oh, shit.
And,
wow. I identify the most with Green Lantern because you're only limited by your imagination.
Baller.
And Will.
Yeah. That's why I like the Kyle Rayner, because he was an artist.
Yeah.
That's actually really clever.
Yeah.
Of them to write that way.
I don't, if I had to fucking come out, I don't really think there's a superhero I associate with. I often associate more with the supervillain. And from that point, I'd have to say it used to be Kang the Conqueror, but I think I'm going to go more Dr. Doom. He is the quintessential villain.
Whose people love him.
He's the inspiration, allegedly, for Darth Vader.
He is.
Yeah, and a huge inspiration behind one of my favorite MCs, Metal Face Doom.
Oh, Metal Fingers Doom.
Yeah.
Motherfucking Doom.
I would love to do an episode about him.
Doom.
God,
we may.
Damn it, rest in peace, MF Doom.
Yeah, that sucks that he died at such a young age. Had a lot more to give the world.
Well, not that anyone's asking, but my favorite superhero of all time. My favorite superhero actually is Freakazoid.
That's a good one.
Yeah, because
how toyetic can you get?
He actually made it into a DC comic crossover at some point. I like him because not only is he a socially awkward teen and all this stuff, just all this the angst, right?
Yeah,
and but he's only his maximum confidence when he is Freakazoid, and a cat gave him his superpowers / internet.
Cat walking on the keyboard.
Yeah, it just typed in the right things. And his
cave guy's underwear is brown.
Yeah.
Everybody down.
His arch nemesis.
He talks like Jerry
is
Lewis a
Carlito
lot.
Montalban. Fucking dude, hell yeah, bro. Like, this is perfect.
Oh, you mean Ricardo Montalban?
Ricardo Montalban, I'm sorry.
Con!
Yeah, Con.
Yeah.
But he's like, laugh with me.
Oh, yeah, and the brilliant Ed Asner is in that show as well. I'm Ed Asner.
Cosgrove.
And then you see his fucking switchblade open up. That shit is fucking timelessly hilarious.
Don't fuck with me.
Oh, man. Yeah.
Even all his villains are still subject to like the most mundane problems, like, hey, man, you got a boogie in your nose there. Do you mind?
I need a ride to the mad scientist store.
You can't fly. You have super speed. I know.
Or like the snake lady who constantly has to be putting lotion on and shit like that.
Yeah, and like he goes in the sewer and he's like, poo water. Ooh, gross. Poo gas.
And Asner's like, I don't like going in the sewer because of the poo water. Oh, man. Hey,
that reminds us, we're going to be at the Fan Expo here in Dallas.
Yes, that is on June 9th.
Come by and say hi, or we will come to you and say hi.
We will find you.
We have lots of questions, as I'm sure you do.
I'm sure we're going to tag team it, and we're going to go individually and prowl the premises and look for people to bother. And that could be you. So
you could be on our show.
Keep an eye open, yeah.
Yeah, you could be internationally known as that person that got interviewed.
Big ups to Brazil, by the way.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thanks to all the countries who have been listening to our show.
We love you guys.
I love that we're a multinational alliance of people that just want to sit around and talk about kooks, cranks, and iconoclasts.
Hey, man. Someone's got to do it.
Yeah.
And that someone is us.
You guys
World needs ditch diggers.
You guys are fun.
Yeah.
And as always, Mike, we can be reached at kookscranksiconoclast@gmail.com.
I was just about to say that.
Kooks-crank-and-iconoclast.com for the website, and always on Facebook. And all you have to do is go to Facebook and look up Kooks Cranks Iconoclast. And also, don't forget, we love it when you tip your bartenders and waitresses.
Or us.
Or us.
Or us.
Yeah.
If you want to donate to us, we are more than happy to accept.
Yeah.
And be on the lookout. Keep your
hungry.
Keep your ear to the ground and your eyeballs asunder, because eventually there will be a secret channel. So get ready for that.
Oh, yeah?
Oh, yeah. It's coming.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe we should, I don't know, get some decoder rings or something ready. I don't know. We'll see.
No telling. But we'll keep an eye on Cornelius. He'll come around. Don't worry. We'll be fine.
To the graveyard.
To the gravy yard.
Yeah. Hey, everyone. We love you. Thanks for coming by. You're obviously smart and attractive, and you know the score because you listen to us. And now you know even more. You're welcome.
And knowing's half the battle.
There you go.
For the Kooks, Cranks, and Iconoclast podcast, I'm Matt.
I'm Mike.
And I'm J-Lo.
And god damn, it was a pleasure to entertain your ears today.
Peace out. We love you.